Now, what is actually good? And Merry Christmas, because I'll be uploading this on Christmas to those that celebrate Christmas. But yeah, I have to talk about what is, I guess, the biggest controversy of UFC 232. What's a little bit of controversy, or what's Jon Jones without a little bit of controversy? So what had happened was Jon Jones, there's something suspicious that came up in his drug test. There's a few things to come from this. There's a history of Jon Jones and failing drug tests and being pulled from fights. But what ends up happening in this situation is that they're actually moving from Nevada to California within 6 days of the event happening. So this is very chaotic behind the scenes. I'm sure UFC never done this before, and it's very interesting as a spectator to see what's going on. First, I think it's very important that we give Jon Jones the benefit of the doubt, and that we treat him as innocent until proven guilty. However, we also need to be realistic in the fact that UFC has, developed the drug protocols more recently, and they're learning how to adapt this. And there's certain fighters that came to UFC since its, beginning, and it was also during a time where people were known to be on steroids, and they were like on cycles and stuff to like beat the system. But with USADA coming in, it's becoming more and more difficult to beat the system, I guess. Like it's really hard for athletes to get away with using steroids. It's obviously looked down upon within the MMA community. So like, I don't know of any fighter at that caliber that would chance taking steroids because it could ruin their career. And these are professional athletes that can be tested year round. And so, as I understand it, is that they have to be in the USADA testing pool 6 months prior to them being able to compete in the octagon. So as long as you're in that testing pool, even if you don't have a fight, you can be pulled to be tested for some sort of illegal substance. And there's so many substances that fighters can get flagged on, where it's kind of like absolutely no sane person would actually keep track of all that shit. However, every fighter is responsible for what enters their body. And something that I found that was interesting, I listened to an interview with Jon Jones. He might have been talking to Ariel Helwani or something, but I remember him saying, like, something as small as not being able to accept a coffee from your receptionist. Like, I have to be careful, like that paranoid that something could, come up somewhere. I became really sympathetic with that, right? Because like, I on a daily basis, accept food from other people. I go out to eat, and if we're putting that expectation on fighters to really know what's going in their bodies, like, can they really accept, do they have to grow their own produce? Like, it's not the world we live in. So I feel like there has to be some sort of leniency as far as some accidents happening. And as far as what I understand from the situation, especially listening to Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz talking about it in their podcast, like today/yesterday, it was pretty recent that they talked about it. As I understand it, it seems like it could be such a small amount of Chernobyl, where it obviously doesn't give that much of an impact competitively. And they're even going as far as to say that it could be because it's the same substance that Jon Jones was penalized previously for failing the drug test, that it might not have exited his system since then. And because it's such a small amount, it might show up in certain drug tests and might not show up in certain drug tests. By the way, the amount of Chernobyl that was found in his body was comparable to a grain of salt that's broken into 50 million pieces, just a couple of those pieces. So it's like such a significantly small amount of Chernobyl was found in his system. And it's an unfortunate situation. There's so many people that were affected and impacted by it. But however, I think it's really easy to place that judgment on somebody without going into the specifics of the situation, especially considering Jon Jones has a large past of having trouble or like failing drug tests in the past. However, I think that we need to know all the information before we pass judgment, because I also appreciate the media, because the media was very like, there's something suspicious that appeared in Jon Jones' test, as opposed to explicitly saying Jon Jones failed the drug test. Because, there's a lot of fighters that had to deal with the media backlash of failing a drug test, but then combated it in court and got it turned around, but never got their character was called into question. But then when they went to court and found it was a tainted supplement that, the supplier was they use some illegal substances in certain products that they manufactured. Like, you know, but the media doesn't say like, oh, the decision was turned around. So I appreciate the media not at least jumping to conclusions. I'm sure some media outlets have, but at least like, you know, using better vernacular, better language, as opposed to just admit it, like directly saying Jon Jones failed the test. However, I think that, you know, as soon as I heard this story, like there are so many people that immediately on Instagram and stuff like started berating Jon Jones and making it seem like he is a cheat and a scam. Like all people see is like that he cheated. When I think it, like, obviously you have to take history into consideration, but I really think that you should, you know, give due process and have some faith that the UFC and the scientists behind these studies are looking out for the fighter's best interest. And if it's based on professional experts' opinions that Jon Jones did not re-ingest this supplement, then I think we have to take it at face value. Of course, there's a conspiracy theorist out there that could say, you know, this is all just a sham. They're just trying to protect their main event. They don't want to, you know, lose the money or whatever. But I think that if it was at a more significant value, there could be room for, you know, removing Jon Jones. It was such a small amount. That's the part that kind of has me like on the edge siding with Jon. But of course I need to know more. I definitely just need to know more. So I'm excited. Joe Rogan's actually going to bring Dirk onto his podcast, Dirk Nowitzki, I think is his name, to talk a little bit more about it and why they allowed Jon Jones to compete and not pull him from the card based on the samples and stuff. So I'm interested to learn more based on that. However, you know, it's just, steroids could just be part of the game. It could be part of the game. And anybody that comes into mixed martial arts as a fighter has that mentality that regardless of what you're on, like, I'm gonna beat your ass. And that's a mentality you do need to have. And so when we saw the response from Alex the Mauler, and his response was just like, you could be on fuel or rocket fuel and I'll still beat you, hashtag and new. I thought that was a very appropriate response from the fighter, you know, like, no excuses, you know, you could be on whatever you want to be. I'm going to still beat you. But, you know, from a third party's perspective, we do have to make sure that all the fighters are on equal playing field. And if there's a substance that's on the banned list and it's in your body, there definitely has to be an investigation. And, you know, there could be people that have sophisticated systems to still beat the system, even though the USADA testing system is very, you know, it's much more rigid than what was there in the past. So I'm hoping that, you know, that Jon Jones is innocent. That's what I'm hoping. I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt until I get more information. And I have to get from a variety of sources. But yeah, that's what I think about this whole situation. Let me know what you think about it. And it's a huge bummer for people that actually went out to Vegas knowing that they were going to watch this fight and then having to see if they can even make it to Inglewood because they moved all the fighters and everybody to that location as opposed to Las Vegas now. So it's a huge headache, I'm sure, but it's what's going to happen. And regardless, selfishly as a fan, I am glad that the fight's still going to go on. But yeah, it's one of those situations. Like, it's unfortunate, but we'll have to see how it goes out. So sorry for the longer video, but that's basically the situation itself. Let me know what you think about it, and yeah, have a good one. Merry Christmas.